Well, boo-hoo, it's been a bad day to be a bureaucrat. The IRS just fired over 6,000 employees as part of President Trump's government downsizing spree. A tearful IRS executive broke the news to staffers, but for Americans who've been drowning in red tape and audits, it's called accountability. And if you think this ends with the IRS, think again. Everything is on the table. Elon Musk says even the Federal Reserve better ready its books. Listen.
Are you thinking about auditing the Federal Reserve as well, which is obviously
yeah, sure.
Regulates our economy?
Well, DOGE may also want to take a look at the Interior Department. The cafeteria, well, that hasn't opened in 5 years because the building is a ghost town. Who can complain about shrinking the government when attendance is actually optional? Well, the left actually can. Listen to Texas Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's comments on the proposed DOGE dividend.
We are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you.
Well, she's all for handouts when it suits her agenda. But, Jackie, it just shows how completely departed from American reality Congress people are. I mean, first of all, $5,000 is a lot of money, and it'd be a wonderful bonus. Secondly, it's our money. It's not hers to give away.
Yeah, and what's amazing to me is that, you know, people like her and Democrats generally, it's almost like they're bipolar. If you're talking about COVID stimulus payments in the amount, most of them were in $1,000, by the way, those checks that were going out, that were not any kind of a refund, but they were coming out of our pocket of the taxpayers who actually do pay their taxes, then that's fine, even though it caused inflation along with the other spending that they did that was reckless. Right now, this economy is chugging along. The stock market's doing quite well, but people are still plagued by problems of affording things, wages not keeping up with prices that haven't come down, that sticky inflation that we've talked about. And you know what? $5,000 would be a lot to the average family of four, for example, who under Biden would suffer almost a $12,000 deficit every year because of inflation and the rises that they saw in prices. So it shows them as tone deaf and out of touch, and it goes back to, why did you lose the election in the first place? Why can no one look in the mirror, understand what happened there, and try to change the dialogue? Instead, they go with the same playbook.
Brian, what about the Fed? I mean, that was very interesting. I think, frankly, a lot of people at the Fed are nervous because they have so overstepped their bounds. Originally, it was more of a prescription to avoid mass hysteria if there was a financial crisis. It was the bank of last resort. It has become so much more that setting interest rates and other things that maybe the market can do better.
Oh, I think the market could do better than the Fed. I think it would be great for Elon Musk and his team to go into the Fed. Look, all they ever do when they go into these places is they ask tough questions to start, right? What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What have the outcomes been? And if they find out that it's, not good decision making, then action ensues, right? If I'm Jerome Powell in this situation, what I would say is, I'd do the Pete Hegseth on him. I'd say, come on in, take a look. We want your help. And, because this is a Fed that could use a little credibility, frankly. Yeah. I think Musk could help with that.
Yeah. Steve, talk about overstepping their bounds. The IRS, which was one of the biggest mistakes, I think, biggest mistakes in creating a government bureaucracy was the creation of the IRS. It was supposed to be a collection agency. It's become so much more of that. It's so feared by the American people. Why not turn it back into a collection agency, get rid of all the deductions, just make it a simple flat tax?
Well, that's a great idea.
It's his idea, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Steve Forbes.
Yeah, you could throw the whole thing out. Related to the story, several years ago, a magazine did a survey. They took a hypothetical family's finances, gave it to 46 different tax preparers, and what they considered the best in the field, and what did you get back? 46 different estimates of what the family owed. This is people who made their living at this. Even they couldn't understand it. So why Free People puts up with this is I just don't understand it. And the amazing thing is, it's very popular. It cuts across all lines. And yet it's rare for any candidate to run on the flat tax because they get accused, oh, you're against charities, you're against this, you're against that. And they run away from it. And it's amazing how the timidity of the political class we have today.
Well, you know, to your point, Steve, you look at the big problem the IRS has been having, those unprocessed tax returns, totaled millions over the last few years. TIGTA, the Inspector General for the IRS, it keeps writing these reports. Yet again, more of these unprocessed tax returns. And yet, Democrats wanted to give the IRS more money, which is what they did under Biden, hoping things would get better. And they hope that, you know, at the end of the day, the IRS is going to do better. But there's a new report out from last week, which shows the IRS's efforts to set up these advice places, places real people could go and ask questions. Nobody could find the address of where these were that they opened. This is money that we put in the Inflation Reduction Act. They gave it to the IRS. The IRS fumbled the ball.
Brian,
they don't want an expansion of the IRS. Just to have a better tax collection. The purpose is to intimidate people.
Yeah.
It's about control.
Right.
And so efficiency, no, that's just a side thing. They want you to fear, and that's power.
Well, and when Biden took office, am I right on this? There were about 80,000 people working at the IRS.
Aren't there 60 now?
Last count, there's like 100,000, right? Yeah. So they've grown that workforce. Ask yourself the question, has your tax preparation process gotten better? Has the service gotten better?
Yeah.
You're certainly not paying lower taxes right now compared to when he started.
Well, they were
My point is, what value are you getting for all of that hiring and spending?
It was $80 billion, and it was folded into the Inflation Reduction Act. They said that they could hire up to 87,000 more agents, but that it wouldn't necessarily be collection agents. It could be a variety of different kinds of employees. At the end of the day, that's a lot of money. I think the Republicans were able to claw back 20 billion of it and bring it down to roughly 60. But that is government expansion, David. Exactly what you're talking about. It's going the wrong way to say we want to become more efficient, we want to do a better job, and we want to provide you with better service. That's just not how it works.
But it's in the nature of the beast, Jerry. I mean, the bureaucracies are like weeds. They just grow and grow. You always have to keep pulling them out. And of course, there's the really ugly underside that DOGE is finding out, that essentially they have become these tools of payola for the constituents and the special interests. I mean, that's the sort of thing that I think of when I hear Crockett talking about what she's talking about. We found that out with the payments that went to Stacey Abrams, apparently from the EPA. Why is Stacey Abrams, of all people, involved in an organization that could be getting $2 billion from the EPA? I mean, these are special interests that are stealing our money.
Elon will find out.
Your metaphor is weeding the garden, right?
Yes.
But the question is, who weeds that garden? Up until now, it's been an internal inspector general or someone like that who's had to do it. None of those people care about weeding because they get paid in that garden, right? You need somebody from the outside to do it.
Musk, he's an exterminator. Right. He's going in.
We got all sorts of labels.
Let's get to the markets right now. Jackie, what are you looking at there?
Well, we're looking at a 554-point loss now on the Dow, but also the markets have taken a leg down since we started the show. So you can see the S&P 500 down by 47, the NASDAQ down by 205 as well. It's because of weak data. Inflation worries are still out there. Consumer sentiment tumbled in February. It was the lowest that we've seen since November of 2023. And this is what I mean when we talk about those payments, David. The economy is still, it's fragile, even though you don't necessarily see it reflected in the stock market every day. That data was driven by fears of price hikes that's related to tariffs. And so there's some uncertainty ahead, too. Take a look at shares of United Healthcare right now because they tumbled to a 10-month low. They're trading down by 9% right now. This is after the company is now a target of a government investigation into, and we've been talking a lot about this, Medicare billing practices, specifically whether diagnoses were made to trigger extra payments in the Medicare Advantage plan. This could go on. This could go on. I say allegedly. We don't know, but it could go on at the insurer level. It could go on at the doctor level. We talk about the fraud overall and how DOGE is trying to go in and work on some of these things. And I also just will add the United Healthcare CEO murder, Luigi Mangione, We'll call him also the alleged suspect because he hasn't had his day in court. But he did have a hearing today in downtown Manhattan.
Okay.
People were flocking outside. Women were. They've kind of propped him up on this pedestal that he's some sort of a hero.
That's
it was interesting.
interesting and I think sick.